Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Live at the Waterhole. On this wonderful Christmas Eve, we wish you a wonderful day. And we're starting off here in the Madikwe Game Reserve, the northwest province of South Africa. And at Jamala. My name is Ralph Kirsten. And as per usual, please don't forget that it's a live and interactive experience. And we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. Do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, and you can use the hashtag WildEarth. Also on the YouTube live chat. What is it that you'd like to see? What would you like to chat about? Whatever it is, wildlife related, please send it through. And as per usual, there is a lot of elephants here at Jamala. We had a similar day yesterday. There were elephants all round, a typical hot summer's day. This is the kind of Christmas that we always expect in South Africa, where you might be watching around the world. The weather might be a little bit different. A couple of youngsters playing in the mud. Some of them, the adults over here, just going more for the drinking site where the fresh water comes out. And the rest of them obviously just cooling down, and some coming to quench their thirsts as well. The elephants have been keeping us thoroughly entertained, and you can expect that when it's nice and hot, and it looks like today is no different. And speaking of it being a nice hot Christmas Eve, I think it's time we're going to have a look what the weather's going to be like across all the different locations. So, as I mentioned, looks like it's going to be hot pretty much all round. A little bit more rain expected at Okukuyu in the Tosha National Park. So, that then does make the animals disperse. So, I'm not sure we're going to see too many animals there, but who knows? You'll have to sit back, relax, and see exactly what happens. The elephants do really love the water, and especially when it's hot like this, they spend a lot of time at the water holes, particularly the bulls, the breeding herds. A little bit more. They come in, they have their drink, they cool off, and then they head out back into the thickets and head for the shade. Sometimes also go off and feed a little bit. They don't like hanging around the big bulls too much. And we can see there now, those youngsters are being called off, probably by the matriarch. Time to go, chaps. So, Picasso, thanks for your lovely wishes for Christmas Eve, and Merry Christmas straight back at you. Lovely to have you on board once more. So there's a little bird calling here. I have a feeling it's kind of robin. The robins are the true songbirds, and well, we also do get a lot of the Indian miners here, which have got lovely calls as well, and they can be quite different calls from different Indian miners. But this one is sounding very much like a robin itself, maybe a Cape scrub robin or white-browed scrub robin, something of the sorts. From Natal spurfowl there, making a bit of a racket. Not anywhere near songbirds, that's for sure. The level of this waterhole has also dropped a little bit. It's obviously as a result of it being so hot, the elephants have been extracting large amounts of water. So it's struggling to keep up.
It's a festive Wilderland. Come along as we go in search for various festive wild animals for the 12 days of Christmas. From honking geese and roaring lions to hooting owls and leaping leopards. Tune in on your nearest device and join the festive fun. Watch the live show from the 14th to the 25th of December. Don't miss out. Embrace the festive season with WildEarth.
So I was just having a quick look into the different robins that occur on Madikwe, and in fact, there's three of them. There's the white-throated robin chat, the white-browed scrub robin, as well as the Kalahari scrub robin, which is a special one that we would get in these parts. So that bird calling, I think, is most likely one of those three. So Belinda asking about tuskers and why they're only found in certain areas. Well, Belinda, historically, there probably would have been a lot more of them, spread around Africa, but all down to the ivory trade. And these hunters would have obviously targeted those big tuskers mostly. Eventually, they would have been going for any of the elephants with tusks, but those were prime targets. And so it's as a result of human activity and the ivory trade in particular that has landed us with a very small pocket of big tuskers that have remained, and the ones that probably eluded the hunters during those times. So those are the lucky ones, and those genetics obviously are still carried through, but not quite as dominant as they would have been. I see zebra starting to make their way in, as well as blue wildebeest, while we see another little breeding herd and the youngsters coming into play. So that youngster you can see is a little bit sort of up the mother's side. It's no longer able to walk below or underneath the mother completely. So one would probably be over a year or so. I would guess between a year and 2 years or thereabouts. And a youngster like this still got lots to learn and will be mimicking the adults to a large degree. And there you can see still sort of putting its mouth into the water and using that more so than its trunk. It's probably able to use the trunk, but not perfectly just yet. And the zebra obviously also feeling the heat, coming in to cool off and just quench their thirsts. So I don't know if that group of zebra is just part of one harem. If it is, that's a very strong stallion that is able to keep so many females within that group. I would think it's maybe two harems or so that come together just to have a drink. So, Justin, nice question. It's not ridiculous at all. There's only ridiculous answers. So, elephants being so big, it's quite surprising that they've actually evolved from relatively small creatures. But it's, evolution is just change over time. And with these animals becoming this big, it's uh, it's just a question of that. That was the road, the evolutionary road that they went down. And with that question, I do want to elaborate a little bit more, and I'm going to do a bit of research on that, and so that we can chat about that. I love these kind of questions because then that gives us some kind of subject to really go down the rabbit hole and look into the evolution of these animals. Nice one. So, just furthering on that, I found a lovely article by the Wits University, and they said that elephants were helped by becoming so big was a very interesting sort of evolutionary trait that they went down. And being large opens up a whole new world of advantages. It deters predators, and when food resources and water are scarce, a large body can store more fat and water. Also, a larger gut can digest food more efficiently. The zebra getting the run around by that female with the tiny little baby. Oh, and just having a quick look at the clouds. The camera says so. So continuing on with this article, they've obviously done quite a bit of studying on the evolutionary adaptations of elephants, and they did a lot of surveys, etc. And the surveys revealed that brain size in ancestral elephants increased in two pulses, approximately 26 and 20 million years ago. The encephalization quotient, a measure of relative brain size corrected for body size, doubled during each pulse. And this transformed the small brain of early elephant relatives into a large brain comparable in every way to that of modern species. Noticeably, these two pulses of growth in brain size correspond to periods of substantial environmental disruptions in Africa. Some 26 million years ago, Antarctica was frozen for the first time, which caused a global aridification of the climate, and Africa's dense rainforests turned into savanna and deserts. The climate then changed again about 20 million years ago to revert to a warmer and wetter African environment. And this climatic instability was supplemented by the appearance of a land bridge between Asia and Africa. Before 20 million years ago, Africa was indeed an isolated continent, but because of continental drift, it eventually collided with the Levant, or the area encompassing modern day Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq, enabling the invasion of rival herbivores and new predators from Asia. The invasive fauna included the ancestors of modern day lion, zebra, rhino, hippos, and antelope, and the great apes did not exist yet. Some large species died out during. The most famous is Arsinotherium, a rhino-like relative of elephants. Ancestral elephants had to adapt or go extinct. At that time, they were still relatively small animals, the size of a tapir, with a short trunk only. And they hypothesized that a bigger brain enabled more behavioral flexibility to be more exploratory, to migrate, to look for food, to cope with a wider variety of diets, leaves, fruits, grass, and to remember the location of distant waterholes during dry periods. For example, a larger brain may have helped them outsmart predators and avoid predators. And obviously, the bigger body would then have contributed to that as well.
For those in the wet and cold this festive season, transport yourself to a warm and sunny Africa. With virtual safaris in real time, interact with African naturalists, connect with fellow nature lovers across the globe, fall in love with nature, and join the WildEarth family this festive season. WildEarth, connecting you to nature.
So speaking of why elephants are so big, it also poses the question of, why some animals are so small. And it, it's all a question of evolution and the reaction to your environment, and then obviously also the conditions or the weather and the climate, as well as the food availability. And there's obviously a lot of theories, which a lot of the time that is all it is. And with science, we obviously want to go to the most probable answer, usually being the correct one, or though we would assume that. Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than that. But historically, if we don't have the clear cut evidence, we obviously have to delve into those different theories and then reach a point where the probability is higher of these kind of answers or theories that would make the most sense. But like I say, sometimes the real answer is the one that makes the least amount of sense. Anyway, I'm going to delve into a few of the theories involved as to why animals have evolved to the point where they are currently. And I mean, it's the same as humans, where we have evolved into the position where we are now. So stick around. We're going to delve into quite a bit of this scientifically and evidence based as far as possible, and obviously the theories that go with it. Those little youngsters really having a ball. It's quite interesting. That elephant on the right seems to almost have floppy ears. Sometimes see that, and it can be as a result of an infection within the ear. But that one's quite strange in that it's actually on both sides. So lots of viewers jumping on and sending through their comments. And I must say, Merry Christmas back to all of you. Hello to all of you. Welcome aboard with us. And I really hope that you enjoy these African scenes with a lovely hot day and the elephants all enjoying themselves in the water, coming to cool off. I'm sure from the colder climates, wherever you might be, this is a real contrast to the weather that you're experiencing. Okay, so I've found quite a lot of answers and theories on a website called Science Line. And speaking of why elephants are so big, so there's a number of answers here, and as I say, theories. And one is the size of animals depends very much on what they eat, believe it or not. Animals that eat low quality, meaning low calorie equals low energy containing food, tend to be large, whereas small animals tend to eat food rich in calories. Cows eat grass, after all, and rodents prefer seeds and nuts. But why is this? A cow or elephant is happy to eat a nut if it happens to find one, but there aren't enough high calorie foods in the environment to sustain a very large animal. An elephant needs to find more calories per day to survive than does a mouse. Small animals need to consume fewer calories per day overall than does a very large animal. So small animals can get by looking around for small amounts of hard to find calorie rich food. Why don't small animals just eat lots of low calorie, easy to find food, for example, grass, instead? Through an accident of geometry, it turns out that small animals burn more calories per unit volume than big animals do. That's because as things get smaller, they acquire more surface area per unit volume. And the area of the surface of their bodies is large compared to how space their body actually occupies. This means that an elephant has less skin, given how much it weighs, than does a mouse. Since a mouse has lots of surface area or skin for its size, it loses heat. Energy equals calorie to the environment, meaning it needs calorie rich food. Mice can't eat enough grass, low quality food, to produce the calories needed to survive. On the other hand, an advantage of being big is that you can get away with eating large volumes of low quality or lower calorie food. And there's plenty of that low quality food around because small animals can't eat it. A good analogy would be the following: if you could eat nothing but carrots for a month, your body couldn't process enough to extract the calories you need per day to survive. As a consequence, you'd lose weight. And please don't try this experiment. If you had a truckload of carrots, however, an elephant would be perfectly happy. It would eat vast quantities of carrots, but because it has less surface area per unit volume or skin area compared to mass than a person does, they lose less heat to the environment and therefore are fine with eating large amounts of low calorie food. Per unit volume, large animals are more efficient than small animals. It takes fewer calories to sustain 1 pound of elephant per day than 1 pound of mice. So, large body size seems like an evolutionary strategy for surviving on lousy food. Elephants eat stuff, bark, grass, etc., that nobody else can survive on. The large size of some dinosaurs is probably the result of the same phenomenon. We are what we eat, perhaps more than you ever thought possible. So that's just one theory. And I think slowly but surely we'll go through a whole bunch more because I'm pretty sure that we're going to be watching elephants pretty much for the entire show. Right. So, another couple of lines of thought involved with this question of why elephants are so big. First, animal size is often tied to its trophic level or what position the animal occupies in the food chain. Plants are the primary producers, turning sunlight into energy. Herbivores are the primary consumers, eating plants and turning plants into energy. Carnivores then eat the herbivores, turning the herbivores into energy. At each higher trophic level, there's a significant loss of energy. You might notice that most carnivores are relatively small compared to herbivores. For example, elephants and moose, the prey of lions and wolves, respectively. If predators were extremely large, they would have to eat a lot more prey animals, which means those predators would run out of food more quickly than smaller predators. Large herbivores also need to eat a lot of food. Adult African elephants eat between 2 to 600 pounds of food each day. In fact, the 10 largest land animals today are all herbivorous. And the largest land animals to have ever existed were sauropod dinosaurs, which were also herbivores. For this reason, there's also not many large herbivores that an environment can sustain. And likely, animals which will not reach the large sizes that were once common during the Mesozoic era when dinosaurs dominated the land. Ocean dwelling organisms are not considered here because different environmental factors have dictated their specific evolution. The second aspect is how elephants became so large evolutionary. And a study on the maximum rate of mammal evolution through documenting changes in the fossil records over the past 70 million years predict that it would take 5 million generations of change for an animal the size of a rabbit to evolve to the size of an elephant. And microevolution still only lowers that evolutionary change to less than 1 million generations. In summary, it takes a really long time to become so big. Predictions for why elephants evolved to become bigger often fall into the success for survival of animals that were larger. The idea being that the larger elephants were better able to survive attacks and fend off smaller predators. Though this is not the only method for survival against predators. Gazelle have the same predators as elephants, yet they are relatively small in size. Instead of size and strength resulting in survival for gazelles, agility and speed resulted in their survival. Thus, gazelle are smaller and faster. Another line of thought to complement the first is that animals that live in colder climates also tend to be larger due to metabolic requirements for survival. This is more speculative, but woolly mammoths were in fact larger than modern day elephants. And since DNA analysis have shown that Asian elephants are more closely related to mammoths than to African elephants, and that African forest elephants and African savanna elephants are two separate species, also evolutionary distant. I think a lot of theories, and there's still lots more that I'll delve into, but I think you also have to think of the laws of probability, uh, because a lot of evolutionary change also comes randomly as a result of success of particular trait start utilizing or becoming, and that becomes successful, and then that goes through into the following generations. And sometimes it's just literally random or by chance. Lovely audio coming from these elephants now. That's one of the favored scratching posts there, that sort of stump that probably was once a tree, that been pushed over that by the elephants, most likely, and now sits at the perfect height for a good scratch.
Family is one of nature's masterpieces. Come along and embrace it with the WildEarth family. Our expert naturalists will spend the day tracking and spotting the families of the safari and explain family dynamics in the wild. The memories we make with our family are everything. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
So, and as we delve deeper into the reasons and the evolutionary processes that have led elephants to look and be as big as they are, another answer being that the short answer being that we actually don't know why. Part of it probably is that elephants are big in order to avoid predation by lions, but in fact, lions can still kill elephants. And there may be other reasons as well. Elephants are hardly the largest land animals in Earth's history. Some of the giant sauropod dinosaurs weighed as much as a herd of elephants cumulatively and traveled in herds themselves. Just imagine. So it's a real area of ongoing research with a lot of speculation, a lot of theories, and somewhere in between lies the truth. But elephants have evolved to be larger so they can escape being preyed upon by other animals and in so doing survive. This is from the likes of leopard, hyena, wild dogs, lions. Being larger allows prey to escape from predation because they're too large to fit easily into a predator's mouth and too large to be easily killed. I think that's part of the reason. But like we started off, why are mice so small? Why are we middle sized or medium sized? Plants and animals are the sizes they are because the ones that grew to those sizes survived better and or had more offspring than the ones that are other sizes. And that's where I sort of speak of randomness and purely by chance. And that's what evolution is a big part of. So, if we also think that evolution through natural selection, this provides an answer to questions like the one that has been posed. If you see a trait in all members of a species, like the big size of an elephant, it is possible that the trait is an adaptation favored by natural selection. Lovely rumbles there. And this means that the trait has improved the chances of the animal's genes of reproducing. So scientists think that ancestors of the modern elephant that happen to be bigger than other elephants were better able to survive and reproduce. Therefore, the genes for being a big elephant were selected for, and on average, the big elephants became more common than smaller elephants. Being big was an advantage as it helps protect against predators that live in Africa and Asia, where elephants live, like lions and tigers. And in fact, elephants are so big that even a pack of lions, a pride of lions, cannot attack a single elephant. We know that this can happen, though. We've seen it in parts of Botswana, but it's very rare. It is clear then that being big provided an advantage for these animals. But being big also has its downsides, however. For example, elephants need to find and eat a lot of food every day to support their massive size. And, we know how much they do need to eat, in excess of 300 pounds or over 100 kilograms of food every single day. But the beauty of the theory of evolution by natural selection is that it uses a lot of principles that can answer many questions, like the one that we've posed as to why are they so big. Right. And so, one last theory in this obviously great question of why elephants are so big. And it could be a short answer in that it comes down to evolutionary pressure. Elephants are herbivores, which means that they don't eat other animals. Being an animal that doesn't eat other animals often means that other animals probably want to eat you. However, it's much more difficult to say a lion. Wow. A lion or a hyena to take down a large elephant than it would be to get a baby elephant. That's not to say that elephants are never caught by lions or hyenas, just that because of their size, they are less likely to be eaten. And it's important to clarify something about how evolution works. Evolution isn't about making the perfect organism. Rather, evolution comes about based on organisms trying to survive in the given environment in which they live, given whatever resources and predators or prey they have to work with. The organisms which survive the best and live to reproduce will likely pass on those characteristics to their offspring, which may benefit from them. In this way, traits are selected for based on circumstances, but also getting the job done. And that can often happen in ad hoc and less than perfect ways. And that's where the sort of point of chance and randomness that I was speaking of comes into play. All right. So lovely chat about the evolutionary sort of adaptations of elephants and why they become so big. I'm pretty sure that these elephants are going to be here for the larger part of the day, so we won't be missing anything. We will come back here, but I think for the time being, let's head to the greater Kruger Park and Juma, where we've got a cute little sighting of a baby nyala suckling from mum. And of course, as always, lots of bird calls here. You can hear the red-billed buffalo weavers. There's probably Meaves long-tailed starlings. Listen out for the woodland kingfisher and lots more. So, Henry, your question, and if animals react to fresh predator scat, they will react to the smell of predators, regardless of whether it's scat. But they can still smell predators even sometimes long after they've moved through the bush. So if a leopard or a lion has been sort of moving through an area, the animals can smell them with it, especially if the wind comes towards them from that spot. So you'll see the nervousness of them, and also looking in the direction of where that predator moved for a substantial amount of time after, even after the animal has been there. So the smell of scat would also be part of that, and they could react to it, yes. But they more so react to that fresh smell of the actual animal. But they can have a bit of a reaction to the scat too. But if it's just on the road and the animals walk past it, they're not particularly perturbed about it. It's more so that fresh smell of the present animal. And you can see that oxpecker hard at work, sort of combing through the hair. They're more combers, and the yellow-billed oxpeckers are more pickers. So they don't comb through the hair as much as these red-billed oxpeckers do, in a different method of sort of picking off the ticks. You can see this mommy nyala constantly sniffing the air, and that would be in an attempt to pick up any predators if they were around. You can see the ears as well, constantly moving backwards and forwards, listening out, adding that to the sense of smell. I actually just heard some blue waxbills, very high pitch, sort of wee wee. You may just be able to hear them now. So Tina, the older the babies get, the more that they do start hurting the mum when they're suckling. So, this process of like pushing up against onto the udders, that does stimulate the milk to flow. But the older the babies get, the more they will hurt the mother, and then that's how they sort of almost become weaned, because the mother gets hurt and then she doesn't want them to drink anymore. So that's the process of weaning. And I think as the teeth start coming in and growing bigger, then it's going to hurt the mother, and then she doesn't want any of it anymore. You can hear the cicadas going off. And this particular species of cicada, I've never actually been able to see what it looks like, but it always reminds me of those big industrial sprinklers as they're going around in circle. The ones that we used to have at school and so on, to water the fields and so on. It sounds identical. So Riley, thanks for your comment. And yeah, I think Nyala are they've got a lovely character, and we often find them around the lodges and so on. They're quite comfortable being around people too, and they almost seem tame. That they make for wonderful photography. You can get very close to them, and the bulls even as well. But you do need to be a little bit careful because you've got to remember that they are wild animals and they could inflict some damage. But generally, very calm, moving through the thickets and the bushes next to, in and around the lodges, and they one of the more common animals around those buildings and that inside the game reserves. So if you ever do go to one of the lodges in the Kruger National Park, it's quite a common sighting to have Nyala walking around inside the compounds. And we've also found quite regularly that it's a very clear indication when there's lions around because suddenly they're all grouped together and then they come even closer to the people and to the buildings themselves in an attempt to be, I think they almost understand that the lions won't come too close to the people. And so I think they feel rather safe. I just heard a southern black tit. He's still calling. Dread, dread, dread. There he goes. And I'm also hearing a rattling sesticular. Lots of birds calling now. Beautiful markings as well on the Nyala. Those we call disruptive markings, the stripes going down the side of the body. A lot of the thicket sort of animals that like staying in the thick brush have these kind of stripes coming down. It just helps to break up the outline of their body and maybe making it a little bit more difficult for the predators to make out where's the head, where's the tail, and so it just helps a bit with camouflage. And also down the lines of anti-predator type evolutionary traits. So as we hear a black-crowned shagro, we got a question from Olivia, um, and asking if they feel safer when the bush is more dense. I do think that the thicket animals definitely have a better sense of safety when the bush is thick like this, Olivia. Um, but the plains animals, obviously being out in the grassland, I think they prefer when it's a little bit more open and they can see far than when the grass is long and then the lions can hide inside the grass. So I think it always depends on what species you are and which kind of habitat you prefer. But I think Nyala definitely feel a bit more comfortable the thicker it is. They're very agile and they're very good at running through the thickets and hiding themselves, etc. You very often find with Nyala as well, they'll leave the little babies, and this is a lot of the thicket animals. They'll leave the baby just under a bush, and off they go and graze, and they'll come back at a later stage. Sometimes they leave them for hours on end, and that baby just stays dead still. And we've found that a lot of people sort of, near to urban areas, whether it's Nyala, bushbuck, and sometimes also the little duikers that occur for us here in the Eastern Cape, we get a lot of them. And people, I've come across a lot of people that have said, no, the mother just left the baby. So we took the baby to try and help it or whatever. That's what they do. So you need to leave that baby there because the mother will come back to come and pick up its baby. And that's part of their sort of survival strategy. So you're actually intervening there. And although people want to help, they just don't understand the behavior of these thicket type bush animals. And that's exactly what they do. So leave them, and they're better off on their own. So I think you could probably say that female Inyala are probably the closest looking to what you might find in the northern hemisphere, fallow deer, and what the little cartoon Bambi. You know, quite similar in color, as well as these white stripes slash dots that you would get that we've always seen on those fallow deer. So quite similar in their coloration and stripes and dots, etc. So now you can see also how well camouflaged they are. Just as they move behind that brush, they've become invisible. They've disappeared. So if you're a predator trying to see that, it almost needs to break cover completely for you to be able to actually spot it.
The world is celebrating Trivia Day, and WildEarth wants to share little trinkets of knowledge with you.
Poison is something, if you ingest, will kill you. Venom has to be injected.
Come along for a hilarious day and be entertained with our team trivia. Our expert naturalists across locations will pair up and compete in wildlife trivia in a battle to be the smarty pants of the safari. Don't miss out on the action. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
So, and that's where also, if we can refer back to natural selection once again, it's like these Nyala wouldn't have actively thought about having stripes and that would help them to survive. It would literally have been one animal that, you know, sort of was born with a little bit of stripes, and that one then was the one that wasn't eaten. So then that trait would have been passed on to the next generation. And as it went through the generations, well, eventually then they all had stripes because those were the ones that were the most successful and were eaten the least by predators. So that's a lot how evolutionary traits get passed on just by the ones that were successful. And normally, or most of the time, it would have happened by chance in the beginning, and then it becomes the norm because of the successfulness of that specific individual and later on the generations and the groupings of that specific species. And suddenly they've all come out into the open. I wonder if they're going to maybe think about going for a little drink. So, Joanna, asking sort of which antelope get along the best. Well, obviously, it's, the bigger the herds of the animals, the more I think that they would get along. So, if we had to say, we probably see in these parts impala in the largest numbers, and they even allo groom. So a lot. Sometimes you see Nyala doing it to a small degree, but I would have to say that you probably would have to say that impala get along the best with each other, with them allo grooming on a regular basis. But if we had to look at different species getting along with each other, Nyala and Bushbuck, they don't get along at all. But then there's, the plains animals that sort of sit in the same grouping. So I think in general that the antelope do get along very well because it's just safety in numbers. Um, the likes of blue wildebeest get along very well with zebra. You often find them moving together. I think there's a bit of back scratching, especially the wildebeest, more of a selective grazer, whereas the zebra more of a bulk grazer. So they're not as picky. So the wildebeest following in behind them to gain from the preparation that the zebra bring to the grass, and that's also why we see that kind of following up behind the zebra in the Great Migrations in the Tanzania and the Serengeti and the Masai Mara. So in general, as I say, antelope do get along pretty well because the more of them, the better it is. The more eyes and ears, and it helps then also limiting your chances of getting eaten by predators. There's that little oxpecker that's also having a bit of a bird bath just behind this female nyala on the right, splashing about in the water. So Chloe, we get quite a few zebra in Djuma, but they're not quite as abundant in some of the other game reserves. So here the most common being impala, nyala, obviously as well, and then the likes of blue wildebeest, zebra, but they don't have the massive herds that we might see in other parts. It's small, more the small harems that moves through. But yes, you'd be quite right in thinking that they're not quite as abundant as some of the other reserves. So it sounded like Jacobin cuckoos calling it just a little while ago. It's always worthwhile watching Nyala a little bit, especially if they're moving around, because if there's any predators nearby, they are one of the best indicators of predators. Very reliable, and they've got a very loud booming bark, quite similar to kudu, that when they bark, you can guarantee that there is a leopard, a lion, or something of the likes, um, where they're calling. So whenever I've heard Nyala barking, I've moved into that area and found a predator. It's the same with kudu. Impala can be a little bit less, reliable, because they can also sort of do that, just to put each other off, especially the males, and they bah, 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 and you might think that there's a predator there, but meanwhile they're actually just trying to throw another male off so that they can fight with him. Um, so not always a true reflection that there's a predator around, but Nyala, guaranteed. If you hear them barking, you move there very fast. And in our case now, at the waterhole like this, if they're moving through and suddenly there's a leopard nearby, we're going to hear them bark. So it's worthwhile listening out. So Caroline, yeah, those Nyala looked beautifully healthy, and it's a true reflection on the bush currently. The bush looking very healthy, and it's a result of the sort of good rains that we've had, and now heading into full summer, lots of regrowth of the vegetation, and so there's lots for them to eat, which is fantastic. So very shortly, we'll also be introducing all of the Africam waterholes. So we'll have a whole array of more waterholes that we can go to. So we got that to look forward to. And of course, always worth a scan. You never know when you're going to see a leopard hanging in a tree somewhere, or a lion lying under a bush. We often look at this log here. There's sometimes water monitor lizards or terrapins out sunning themselves. Looks to be a Meaves, long-tailed starling. Similar to a Cape Glossy starling, but got a much longer tail, and they're a little bit of a bigger bird. Right, so in a few seconds' time, we will be then introducing the Africam waterholes, and the first one that we'll be going to is Africam Naledi Dam.